They say a man never really knows what he has until it's gone. I thought I understood that phrase when I lost my wife to cancer, but I had no idea how true it would become until the day my own son turned his back on me. My name's Richard. I'm 71, and I live on a worn-out bench behind the Safeway parking lot in Oakland, California. I wasn't always like this. I wasn't always the man people pretend not to see as they hurry by with their groceries and iced coffees. I used to be someone's husband, someone's father. I used to fix roofs for a living, owned a small roofing business for 20 years. Nothing fancy, but it paid the bills. I coached Little League on the weekends. I paid off our modest home in Hayward. I made pancakes every Sunday morning. And I loved my family with everything I had, especially my boy, Lucas. Lucas was my pride, my reason for pushing through back pain and long hours on the job. He had his mother's soft eyes and my stubborn jaw. I used to call him Scout when he was little because he always asked questions. Smart ones, too, like, "Dad, why do clouds follow us?" Or, "How do you know when someone stops loving you?" That one I didn't know how to answer even then. Lucas grew up, went to college, first in the family to do so. I helped him move into his dorm with tears in my eyes and a toolbox in my hand. He studied engineering, made me so damn proud. He got married young, too young, if you ask me. Her name was Megan. Sharp girl, but cold. I never quite trusted her smile. She didn't like the way I talked, said I was too old school. She once told me I made Lucas soft, that he should learn to stand on his own without always calling me for help. I kept my distance after that, tried not to interfere. I figured if Lucas was happy, that was enough. For years, I kept working even after retirement age. I didn't want to be a burden, and truthfully, I liked having something to do. Then came the pandemic. The jobs dried up. Roofs didn't get fixed when folks were out of work themselves. My savings slowly bled out, covering bills, small car repairs, prescriptions. When I turned 70, I sold my truck to make rent. That was the same year Lucas called me, voice trembling, to say Megan had left him. She'd been seeing someone else for months, took the apartment, the car, and worst of all, their daughter, Lily, my granddaughter. I tried to be there for him. I told him I understood that pain like that doesn't go away easy, but it doesn't stay forever either. He cried, I cried, and for a moment it felt like we were close again. Then silence. Days turned into weeks. When I called, he was short. When I visited, he was busy. He got a new job in Sacramento, some design firm, said he needed space, and said he couldn't help me like he used to. I didn't ask for help. I only ever asked for time, for company. But that's not how he saw it. In January of last year, my landlord raised the rent. I couldn't pay. I begged for an extension. Got 30 days. I called Lucas. I explained everything. No dramatics, no guilt, just the facts. He didn't say no. He just said nothing. He said, "I'll see what I can do." And that was the last I heard from him. 33 days later, I was on the street. At first, I stayed in my old van behind a tire shop. I ate canned soup, tried to shower at the YMCA. Then the van got towed. I had no money to retrieve it, no address to give, no one to call. That first night on the sidewalk, I swear I thought I'd die. Not from cold or hunger, but from shame. A man builds his life brick by brick, and then in one gust of bad luck and silence, it all falls down. The worst part wasn't the hunger, or the stink, or the way my knees felt like glass shards grinding every time I got up from the curb. It was remembering the sound of Lucas's voice when he was 5, running toward me with arms wide open, yelling, "Dad!" like I was the whole world. Now I was invisible. People don't see old men on the street, really. They see a problem, a smell, a failure. And God help you if you're clean-shaven and quiet, then they think you're faking it. I once sat outside a coffee shop just resting my legs. A woman walked by, tossed $1, and then snatched it back when she saw I wasn't dirty enough. She said, "You're not homeless, you're a con." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say I worked harder in 1 year than she ever will. But what's the point? You stop explaining after a while. One night, maybe 4 months ago, I walked 10 blocks just to see Lucas's apartment in Sacramento. I didn't plan to knock. I just wanted to see if the porch light was on. It wasn't, but I saw shadows moving behind the blinds, laughter. I stood across the street like a ghost. He had a new woman now, younger, blonde. She held Lily in her arms. I hadn't seen my granddaughter in 2 years. Her hair was longer. She was beautiful, just like her grandma. And I wept. I turned and walked away before they saw me. That night I slept behind a grocery store dumpster and dreamed of Sunday mornings. Pancakes, baseball mitts, bath time songs. A little boy who once believed his dad could fix anything, even a broken heart.
Some nights I still talk to her, my wife, Ellen. Not out loud, not like those poor souls mumbling to the sidewalk. I talk to her in my mind, like I used to, when she was alive and asleep next to me. When I'd stare at the ceiling fan and whisper my fears into the darkness. She always knew how to calm me, even when she was gone. Sometimes I imagine what she'd say if she saw me now. I don't think she'd judge me. Ellen was never one for blame. But I do think she'd ask, gently, "Why didn't you ask for help sooner?" That's the part that burns. The truth is I did. I asked Lucas. Not for money. Not even for a bed. Just for a little warmth. A phone call now and then. A meal once a week. A ride to the clinic when my knees swelled up and walking felt like punishment. But he had his own storms. That's what he said once. "Dad, I'm barely holding it together myself." I get it. I really do. I was a father. I know what it means to want to protect your space, to feel like one crack in the dam will flood your whole life. But I was never trying to take. I just wanted to feel human again. You lose that fast out here. A man without a mailbox becomes a man without a name. Try getting your medication refilled with no ID and no address. Try using a public restroom when the security guard watches you like you're about to steal the soap. There was a morning not long ago when I tried to warm my hands at a bus stop heater. It was freezing, maybe 35 degrees. My fingers were blue. A young guy in a Patagonia jacket looked at me like I was diseased and said, "That's not for you." I wanted to ask, what is for me then? Because nothing out here feels like it is. I used to carry a little photograph of Ellen and Lucas. It was taken in Yosemite years ago, when we still had that old green camper van. Ellen was smiling, her arm around Lucas, who was maybe 9, holding a stick like it was Excalibur. I lost that photo last winter, when my coat was stolen from a church pew while I napped. I still remember every line of Ellen's face, though. I still remember how Lucas used to ask her to sing lullabies in Spanish, even though none of us were Spanish. She had this soft way of making everything feel like a song. I miss her voice most of all. One afternoon, I was sitting near a bus terminal when an old man sat down beside me. He was maybe older than me, with a thick white beard and eyes that had seen war. He offered me half a sandwich. I hadn't eaten in over a day. I thanked him. We didn't talk much, but he said one thing that stuck. "You can't make a home out of people. They move." That hit hard, because that's what I did, didn't I? I made Lucas my home after Ellen passed. I put all my hope into him, my joy, my memories, my worth. And when he moved, emotionally, physically, I was left homeless in every sense. There are days I don't blame him. Maybe he saw in me everything he was afraid to become. Maybe I reminded him too much of pain. Maybe Megan poisoned his heart after the divorce, made him think I was just another weight to carry. I don't know. I'll probably never know. I tried writing him a letter once. It took me 3 days because I had to borrow pens and find clean paper. I wrote from the library, then from the back of a diner, where the waitress let me sit if I promised not to bother customers. I wrote about memories, about Lily, about how I missed hearing her laugh. I told him I didn't want anything, just to see her, just once. I folded the letter, sealed it with shaking fingers, and walked 4 miles to drop it at his apartment door. I never got a reply. 2 weeks later, I saw the envelope in the trash bin near his complex, unopened, stained with coffee. That was the day I stopped writing. People think homelessness happens like a thunderstorm, suddenly, without warning. But it's slower. It's more like rust. A bit at a time, unnoticed, until one day the entire structure gives way. First, you lose work, then your savings, then your space, then your dignity, then, if you're not careful, your mind. I try to hold on to mine. I read newspapers from the trash. I talk to birds. I count cars by model and color like puzzles. I keep routines. Wake at dawn. Wash at the church basin. Scavenge for coffee in back alleys where baristas dump the leftovers. There's a rhythm to it. A pattern. It helps you pretend this life makes sense. But sometimes at night, when the wind cuts through my blanket and the sky looks like shattered glass, I can't pretend. I lie there and I wonder if Lucas ever tells Lily about me. If he says my name. If she asks, "Where's Grandpa?" and he lies or just says he's gone. I wonder if she remembers the storybooks I read her, or the stuffed turtle I gave her before Megan took her away. That turtle cost me an entire day's wages, but she loved it, carried it everywhere. I wonder if she still does. Maybe I don't want to know. Maybe the not knowing is better than the truth, because the truth is, I'm nobody now. Not a father, not a husband, not a worker. Just another ghost on the sidewalk with stories no one cares to hear. And yet, I'm still here. Somehow. That counts for something, doesn't it?
There's a coffee shop on Franklin Avenue that throws out their pastries every night at 9:15 sharp. I know because I wait across the street watching the barista with the green streaks in her hair carry the black garbage bag to the side bin. She does it fast, like it's just another chore, like it isn't the only warm food I get some days. If I'm lucky, it'll be banana bread or blueberry muffins wrapped in wax paper. If I'm not, it's stale croissants with no filling. Either way, I take what I can get. I used to be proud. Too proud, maybe. I used to tell Ellen I'd never beg. If it ever comes to that, I'd say, just dig a hole and bury me. Funny how hunger changes your standards. Cold, too. Cold breaks a man down quicker than shame. One night, the barista saw me waiting. I thought she'd yell or call the manager, but instead, she crossed the street and handed me the bag herself. Said, "There's 2 fresh ones in there. Didn't want them to go to waste." I nodded, my voice stuck in my throat. People don't realize how rare kindness is until they haven't seen it in months. I don't know her name. I never asked. Didn't want to ruin it with conversation. Sometimes silence is safer than the risk of being forgotten again. There was a time I had friends. Back when I was still working, still Richard the Roofer, I'd go bowling with a couple of guys from the trade. We weren't close, but we'd laugh over cheap beer and busted gutters. That ended around the same time my knees gave out. Nobody wants a buddy who reminds them of what's coming. I called one of them, Dennis, maybe a year ago, asked if he knew of any odd jobs, anything I could do with my hands, even if it meant holding a flashlight while someone else climbed the ladder. He said, "Rich, I'd love to help, but we're all hurting right now." Then he added, "Have you tried the shelter on 8th? That's the thing. Once you become a problem people don't know how to fix, they pass you off like a chore. Everyone has a limit, even for compassion. The shelter, I tried. God knows I tried. I stood in line for hours in the rain. They gave me a number, told me to wait. When I finally got inside, the smell hit me first. Sweat, bleach, despair. Rows of cots packed so tight you could feel your neighbor's breath on your neck. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to a man 3 beds over cry in his sleep. The next morning, my backpack was gone. So was my coat. I never went back. At least outside, the betrayal is expected. Out here, I've learned to listen more than talk. You hear things when people think you're deaf or dumb or just furniture. One afternoon, I sat behind a bus stop while 2 teenagers waited for a ride. One of them pointed at me and said, "You think he used to be someone?" The other laughed and said, "Nah, he was probably always like that." That stuck with me. He used to be someone, that phrase. Like being someone is something you can lose, like a hat or a wallet. I wanted to shout, "I was a husband, a father. I built homes for people like you." But again, what's the point? They wouldn't believe it. I barely believe it myself some days. Sometimes I go to the public library just to feel normal. I sit in the corner and pretend to read, even though the letters blur from exhaustion. The librarians are kind enough not to shoo me away. They must know. They must see it all the time. People clinging to routines just to keep their minds from unraveling. Last week, I found an old National Geographic with a photo of Yosemite. It was the exact spot where that picture of Ellen and Lucas was taken. I stared at it for 20 minutes. I remembered how Ellen packed ham sandwiches and juice boxes, how Lucas tripped on a root and scraped his knee, then told me he wasn't going to cry because he was a mountain man now. I laughed so hard I scared the squirrels. I wonder if he remembers. I wonder if he ever takes Lily there. Or if he pretends those years never happened. It's easier to forget someone when you erase the places they existed in. I don't blame him for being broken after the divorce. Megan cut him deep. I saw it in his eyes. But we all break, don't we? What matters is what you do after. I thought maybe we'd lean on each other. Two men grieving love in different forms. Instead, he ran and left me behind. I don't even know what job he has now. I don't know if Lily's in school or if she still plays the piano like Megan used to brag about. I don't know if they still live in that same apartment or if they've moved or if they've built a whole new life where I never existed. All I have are memories, and even those feel like borrowed time. There are moments when I think about calling him again, just once, to hear his voice, to say, I'm still here. But I don't. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm afraid of the silence, afraid he won't pick up, or worse, afraid he will. And I'll hear that same tired voice saying he's busy or in a meeting or trying his best. I've heard that phrase so many times it's lost all meaning. I'm trying my best. We all are, son. We all are.
There's a man named Curtis who sleeps near the loading dock behind the old furniture warehouse off Jefferson Street. He's maybe in his 60s, hard to tell with the grime and the years etched into his skin like bark. We don't talk much. None of us do. Not really. But we nod when we see each other. That means something out here. Curtis has a cart. It's filled with bags and blankets and empty soda cans he trades for nickels. He once told me, the key to surviving this life is to not let your soul rot faster than your teeth. I didn't laugh, but I understood. You hold on to whatever pieces of yourself you can. For me, it's remembering how to tie a tie, even though I haven't worn one in years. It's brushing my teeth with water and baking soda when I can find it. It's sitting upright when I eat, even if it's cold chili from a gas station trash. Dignity doesn't leave all at once. It fades like paint. But if you're careful, if you protect certain corners of yourself, some of it sticks around. I remember once telling Lucas, back when he was about 10, that being a man isn't about money or status. It's about what you do when no one's looking. I wonder if he remembers that. I wonder if he still believes it. The other day, I saw a boy around Lily's age walking down the sidewalk with his dad. He had a backpack too big for his little frame and a baseball cap turned sideways. The dad was smiling, saying something I couldn't hear, and the boy looked up at him like he hung the moon. I had to turn away. The ache hit me so fast it felt like a punch to the gut. Not jealousy. No, not that. I'm happy there are fathers who still show up. It was grief. Grief for a life that ended without a funeral. People think death is the only way to lose someone. But abandonment? It's a living death. You still breathe, but everything meaningful about life shrivels. You become a photograph no one hangs. A birthday no one remembers. A name that tastes like regret. I used to imagine what I'd say if I ever saw Lucas again. Really saw him. Not just from across the street or through a closed window. I'd imagine him standing there, hands in pockets, eyes tired but open, and I'd say, "Son, I don't hate you. I never did. I just miss you. I miss being part of your life. I miss knowing how your day went. I miss Lily's laugh. I don't need a room or a check. I just need to know you still see me as your father." But that's the thing about rehearsed speeches. They're useless without a stage. He's never shown up. Not once. There was a church group a while back that came around with sandwiches and hygiene kits. They asked if anyone wanted prayer. I said yes, not because I'm overly religious. I lost a lot of faith when Ellen died, but because I wanted to hear someone say my name again.
The woman who prayed with me, her hands were warm. She didn't flinch when she touched me. She asked, "What do you want God to do for you, Richard?" I froze. No one had asked me what I wanted in years. I thought about saying a home, or health, or even a second chance. But all I said was, "I want my son to remember I exist." She squeezed my hands and cried. I didn't, not then. But that night, under a flickering street lamp, with nothing but my coat and a crumpled tarp, I let it out. Quiet sobs. The kind that make your ribs hurt. I remember Ellen once telling me that grief isn't just sadness, it's love with nowhere to go. And she was right. Every day I carry this heavy, restless love with no destination, no mailbox, no return address. I think that's why I talk to her sometimes, because she's the only one who still listens. I talk to the stars too, not in a crazy way. I just look up and imagine she's out there somewhere. Maybe sitting with my own parents, maybe watching over Lily. I hope she's proud of me for still trying, for still holding on. I've seen men fall deeper than I have. Men who forget their names, who trade their shoes for whiskey, who scream at invisible enemies until the cops come. And I'm not judging. We all cope in different ways. But I made a promise to Ellen at her grave that I wouldn't lose myself, no matter how far I fell. And even now, with my ribs sticking out and my feet blistered from walking, I still remember who I am. I'm Richard. I'm a father. I used to make pancakes on Sundays. I built roofs. I told bedtime stories. I gave my son every ounce of love I had. And even if he never sees me again, even if I die nameless on this concrete, that truth doesn't disappear. It was real. It mattered. I mattered.
It was a Thursday when I finally broke. Not in the dramatic way people imagine, not screaming into the wind or tearing at my clothes. No, it was quieter than that. I had been walking for hours trying to find a new spot to sleep. The corner behind the gas station had been taken over by a group of younger guys, loud and angry, always fighting over food or space. I didn't want trouble. My feet were swollen and my lower back screamed with every step. The sky looked like bruised cotton, thick with rain. I found a dry patch beneath an overpass. Nothing special, just concrete and noise, and the faint smell of urine. But it was dry. That was enough. I laid down and stared at the graffiti above me, red and black letters spelling out someone's pain. No one cares if you disappear. And in that moment, I believed it. I believed every word. I stopped counting the days by then. Time had blurred into cycles of light and dark, cold and colder. My body had adjusted to hunger. Your stomach stops growling after a while, like even it gives up hope. I hadn't seen my own reflection in weeks. The last time I did, I didn't recognize the man staring back. His eyes were dull, rimmed with yellow. His beard had turned almost completely white. There was something hollow behind his cheeks, like part of his soul had been scooped out. I don't think I cried that night. The tears had dried up sometime in February, maybe March. What I felt was worse than sadness. It was weightlessness. Like I no longer had gravity. Like I could just float into the air and vanish, and not a single person would reach up to catch me. And then, just as I closed my eyes, I heard it. A voice. Soft. Female. "Sir? Are you all right?" For a second I thought I was dreaming, maybe even dying. But I opened my eyes, and there she was. A young woman, maybe late 20s, kneeling beside me with a flashlight. Her hair was in a messy bun, and she wore a gray hoodie with the logo of a local shelter I thought had shut down. "Can I sit?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't flinch at the smell or the dirt. She didn't talk down to me or look away. She just sat. After a moment she said, "My name's Jasmine. I run a community program nearby. We do outreach for seniors." I didn't say much. I barely spoke above a whisper, but I answered her questions, my name, my age, where I usually stayed. I didn't tell her about Lucas. I didn't think I could. She pulled out a small notepad and offered me a sandwich, ham and cheese. still warm. I took it like a man grabbing a rope from a flood. She said, "We have a mobile clinic coming Saturday. If you show up, we can help. Maybe even get you on a housing list." I nodded again. And before she left, she smiled and said, "You're not invisible, Mr. Richard." That was the first time someone had said my name in over a year. I held on to that moment like a photograph in my chest. Saturday came and I showed up. The clinic was in a church parking lot. They checked my blood pressure, gave me clean socks, bandaged the sores on my feet. A woman in a white coat looked me in the eye and said, "You've got a strong heart. Let's keep it that way." It wasn't a miracle. I didn't get a job or a room or a visit from Lucas, but it was something. A crack of light through a boarded window. They put my name on a list. I started getting warm meals once a day from the outreach van. I got a tarp that didn't leak and a phone number written on a card that said, "Call anytime. You matter." I haven't called yet. I'm not sure I know how to talk to someone who believes that, but I keep the card folded in my pocket, right next to the only photograph I've managed to replace, one of Lily from a magazine ad that looks like her. I pretend it's real. I pretend it's her smile I'm holding on to. I've stopped hoping that Lucas will call. Hope can be cruel when left unattended too long. But I do hope she remembers me. Maybe one day she'll ask, "Where's Grandpa?" Maybe she'll dig through old boxes and find a drawing I helped her with, or a birthday card I signed her. And maybe, just maybe, she'll wonder if I'm out there somewhere, still loving her with every breath I've got left. Because I am. That's the part that hasn't broken. Not yet.
There's a little park near 23rd and Maple that most folks pass by without noticing. It doesn't have fancy fountains or colorful playgrounds, just a couple of old benches, a patchy lawn, and a willow tree that leans like it's tired of standing. I go there in the mornings now. It's quiet, peaceful. Sometimes there's a man walking his dog, or a mother jogging with a stroller, but mostly it's just me and the birds. I sit under that willow and sip cheap instant coffee I make with hot water from the outreach van's thermos. I watch the sun crawl across the grass, and I breathe. Just that, breathing, feels like a blessing some days. Jasmine, the girl who found me under the bridge, kept her word. She came back every Saturday with supplies and a notebook. One week, she brought a pair of reading glasses from the donation box. "I guessed your prescription," she said with a grin. They weren't perfect, but they were close enough to let me read the newspaper again. That was the first time I'd finished a crossword in over a year. The next week, she brought a little AM/FM radio, said it was solar-powered. I sat in the park for hours that day listening to old jazz stations and static-filled baseball games. I imagined myself back in my living room, Ellen in the kitchen humming, Lucas doing homework on the floor, me pretending not to check the score every 5 minutes. I didn't tell Jasmine much about my past. I couldn't, not yet. But she talked, told me about her father, how he left when she was 9, told me about her mother working 2 jobs, and how the church kept food on their table. Maybe that's why she does what she does. Maybe that's why she sees me when others don't. One afternoon, she asked if I ever thought about reconnecting with family. I didn't answer at first. Then I said, "My son forgot I exist. Or maybe he remembers and just doesn't care. I'm not sure which is worse." She didn't try to fix it. She just nodded and handed me a peanut butter sandwich. Sometimes people come back, and sometimes they don't. But either way, you're still here. I think that's stuck with me more than anything. I'm still here. I say it to myself sometimes when the nights are long and cold, when my knees ache and the rats get too close. I whisper it like a prayer. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still Richard. A week ago, something strange happened. I was sitting in the park, listening to the radio, when a little girl ran past chasing a red balloon. She tripped near my bench. I helped her up. She looked at me with big green eyes and said, "You smell like my grandpa's car." I laughed for the first time in months. Her mother ran over, apologizing profusely. I told her it was all right. She looked me up and down, hesitant, cautious, but then she smiled too. "Thank you," she said. Most people would have just looked away. After they left, I sat there with a strange warmth in my chest, like a thread had connected me back to the world for a brief second. That night, I didn't shiver as much. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was something else. Curtis, the older man with the cart, got sick last week. Real sick. He coughed until he couldn't stand. The outreach team tried to get him into a shelter with a medical wing, but he refused,
said he didn't want to die in a room full of strangers. I sat with him that night, shared half a granola bar. He said, "You're not like the others. You still look people in the eye." That meant more to me than I can explain. Curtis passed 3 days later. They found him near the train tracks, wrapped in his blanket like it was armor. No one claimed his body, no funeral, no obituary, just a quiet van ride to wherever the forgotten go. I walked back to the park that morning and sat beneath the willow. I didn't cry, I just whispered his name. Curtis. So he wouldn't vanish completely. So someone would still remember. That same day, Jasmine told me I was moving up on the housing list. Could be a month, maybe less. There's a senior housing unit opening up near the lake. I nodded, tried to act calm, but inside something flickered. Hope. A dangerous word. One I hadn't let myself feel in so long it felt foreign on my tongue. But it was there. A room. A key. A place to put my radio. To boil water without begging. To sleep without fear. I still haven't told Lucas. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe one day, if I get a mailbox again, I'll send him a letter. Not to guilt him, just to say I survived. Just to let him know the man who raised him didn't disappear into nothing. That I'm still here, still breathing, still waiting for someone to say, "I'm proud of you, Dad." Even if it never comes, I'll keep walking toward that light anyway. Because if Curtis taught me anything, it's that someone has to remember your name. Even if it's just...
They gave me a key on a Tuesday. A real key. Metal, cold, with a little plastic tag that read Unit 4C. I turned it over in my palm like it was made of gold. Jasmine smiled when she handed it to me. "It's small," she said, "but it's yours." I nodded, not trusting my voice. I hadn't had a key in nearly 4 years. I hadn't had a door that locked, a place to put things without fear they'd be gone when I came back. When I walked into that apartment, if you can call it that, it felt like stepping into another life. The walls were bare, the carpet worn, the furniture second-hand and mismatched. But to me, it was a palace. A bed, a stove, a window that looked out on a parking lot and a sliver of sky. I touched everything. The sink faucet, the light switches, the fridge door. I opened and closed the closet 5 times just because I could. I boiled water. I made oatmeal. I sat at the small kitchen table and cried into a chipped coffee mug. I was home. Not the home I'd built with Ellen, not the one I raised Lucas in, but a home nonetheless. Mine. No one could kick me out. No one could tow it away or tell me to move. I didn't sleep much that first night. My body wasn't used to warmth. The silence was unfamiliar, almost unnerving after so many nights of sirens and rustling plastic. I kept thinking I'd wake up on concrete, that it was all a dream stitched together by hunger and delusion. But morning came, real morning, with sunlight on beige walls and birdsong faint through the glass. I made instant coffee, ate toast with peanut butter, took a shower that lasted too long. My knees ached, my back protested, but I sang anyway. An old song Ellen used to hum while making Sunday breakfast. For the first time in years, I felt clean. Not just in body, but in spirit. I started walking differently after that. Straighter, slower, like a man with purpose again. I stopped by the outreach center and brought Jasmine a thank you note. I couldn't afford flowers or gifts, so I wrote out one of Ellen's favorite poems in my best penmanship. Jasmine read it twice. Then she hugged me. "You're not done yet, Mr. Richard," she said. "There's still more of your story to tell." I didn't know what she meant then, but I do now. A week later, she asked if I'd come speak to a small group at the shelter. Just a few seniors, most of them still unhoused. I hesitated. What did I have to offer? But Jasmine insisted. "Just tell your truth," she said. So I did. I told them about roofing jobs and banana bread in dumpsters, about Curtis and crosswords, about the feeling of losing your name and the miracle of being called Sir again. I didn't mention Lucas. I wasn't ready. But afterward, a woman with shaky hands grabbed mine and said, "You gave me hope." That shook me. I'd forgotten what it felt like to help someone, to give instead of just beg. Jasmine must have seen something in me because she asked if I'd consider volunteering, helping organize donations, maybe even running a weekly coffee and stories meetup at the center. I said yes. It wasn't much, an hour here, 2 hours there, but it made me feel useful, alive. The staff gave me a secondhand coat with my name stitched into the collar. I hadn't worn my own name in so long it felt like a stranger on my chest. One evening after a community meal, a boy about 8 years old came up to me. He stared for a while, then said, "You look like someone's grandpa." I smiled and replied, "Maybe I am." And for a split second, I imagined Willie. What she looked like now, if she still played piano, if her front teeth had finally come in straight. I wondered if she still asked about me. I wondered if Lucas had told her I was gone. Or worse, that I'd chosen to disappear. That night I sat at my table with the radio low, staring at a postcard I'd picked up from the shelter's bulletin board. On the front was a photo of the Oakland skyline at sunset. On the back, blank lines waited. I picked up a pen and began to write. Dear Lucas, I don't know if this will reach you or if you'll care. I don't want anything from you. I'm not angry. I just wanted you to know I'm still here. I have a roof again. I make oatmeal every morning. I volunteer. I tell people who feel forgotten, and I tell them their names still matter, just like yours does to me. Always. Love, Dad. I didn't sign it Richard. I signed it the way he used to say it when he was little. Daddy. It took me 2 days to decide whether to send it. But on the third morning, I walked to the mailbox, heart pounding, hands trembling, and dropped it in. No return address, just a prayer. A whisper. A hope. The kind I hadn't dared to feel in a long, long time.
The postcard had been gone for 3 weeks. I stopped checking the mailbox after the first 7 days. It was too much to hope for anything. I kept myself busy, folding donated clothes at the center, teaching the older guys how to make coffee without burning the pot. We laughed, more than I thought we would. Even pain has a sense of humor when you let it breathe. Some mornings I'd walk past the old bench where I used to sleep. I didn't linger, just looked. Not to feel pity, but to remind myself of the distance I'd crossed with no map. Sometimes survival is the bravest story of all. Jasmine told me she'd recommended me for a part-time job. Nothing fancy, just janitorial work at the clinic where the mobile team was based. They want someone dependable, she said. Someone who knows what it's like to fall and get back up. I nearly said no. My knees still ached. My energy came and went like tides. But I thought about it that night, sitting under a cheap yellow lamp in my apartment, holding the photo of Lily from that magazine ad. Maybe it was time, not just to keep surviving, but to live. I said yes. My first shift was on a Monday. I wore a donated polo shirt 2 sizes too big and khaki pants that reminded me of church. I scrubbed floors, cleaned toilets, took out trash, mopped up muddy footprints. No one looked down on me. Some smiled, some nodded. I was invisible in a different way now. Not because I didn't exist, but because I was part of the backdrop. Steady, quiet, useful. I didn't mind. One afternoon, while emptying a trash bin near the reception desk, I heard a little girl laugh. That kind of pure, belly-deep laugh kids don't know they're supposed to be embarrassed by. I looked up, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. It was her. Lily. Her hair was longer now, wavy like Ellen's, and she wore a sparkly blue jacket and carried a pink folder covered in stickers. She was holding hands with a woman I didn't recognize, probably a nanny. My eyes darted, looking for Lucas. I didn't see him, but I froze. Completely. She turned slightly, looked my direction. Her eyes, green and wide, just like when she was 3, landed on me. Not recognition, just curiosity. I smiled gently, a small, careful smile. The way a man smiles when the world is fragile. And then something impossible happened. She smiled back, just for a second, then turned and skipped off behind her guardian, disappearing down the hallway. I didn't follow. I didn't speak. I just stood there, the mop in my hand, knees trembling. I went to the bathroom and cried silently into my sleeve. Not from sorrow, from something else. Relief, maybe? A thread connecting us again, however thin. The next morning, the receptionist handed me a small envelope. "Someone dropped this off for you," she said. I opened it in the break room, hands shaking. Inside was a note. Plain white paper, Lucas's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. "Dad, I got your postcard." I didn't know what to say. I still don't. "But Lily asked about you yesterday. She said a man smiled at her and she felt safe. I think that was you. I hope it was. If it's okay, I'd like to meet. Maybe coffee? No pressure, just let me know. Lucas." I reread that note 10 times, not because I couldn't believe it, but because I could. It was real. His words, his tone, awkward, hesitant, but reaching, and that's all I ever wanted. Not an apology, not even an explanation, just a hand reaching out from the duck. I sat at the same park bench under the willow that afternoon and thought about Ellen. I imagined her sitting next to me, her hand on mine, whispering, "I told you he'd come back." I didn't need to speak to hear her voice. It was always with me. In the rustle of leaves,
and Lily's laugh, and the quiet miracle of one man's return. 2 days later, I met Lucas at a small coffee shop near the lake. He was older now, lines on his face I hadn't seen before, his eyes tired but searching. We didn't hug right away. We just sat, drank coffee, talked slowly, carefully. He told me he was sorry, that he didn't know how to handle losing Megan and didn't know how to hold on to anything that reminded him of who he used to be. And I told him I understood, that I had spent years being angry, then numb, then nothing. But I never stopped loving him, not once. We didn't solve everything in an hour. We didn't erase the pain. But we began. And sometimes that's more than enough. Before we left, he pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of Lily at her last piano recital. She was beaming, her small hands above the keys, ribbons in her hair. "She remembers you," he said softly. "She wants to see you again." I didn't speak, just nodded, eyes blurred. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight on my chest begin to lift. I'm still Richard, still a father, still a man with stories worth telling. I've learned that people can break your heart and still be worth loving, that healing doesn't always come all at once, and that even when you've lost everything, you haven't lost the power to begin again. So if you ever see a man sitting quietly on a park bench smiling at the wind, don't look away. He might be remembering the moment the world gave him back a reason to stay.